Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Conventional Wisdom Podcast, part of the FreedomCast Network. I'm your host, Samuel Vernon. Thank you so much for joining me on this very special episode. I am excited to talk to you today about Bitcoin. It's one of these topics that I'm passionate about. I'm very excited to get into it and to dive deep and really explain and share this idea of Bitcoin with others because I think it's worth sharing. But also, I want to say that I'm sorry because this episode has been a long time coming. It's been kind of dry on the content front because I have done so many rewrites and edits and do-overs with this script because there's just so much to pack into Bitcoin. I mean, there's layers upon layers, and you have to pick and choose what you want to talk about, what makes sense to fit these pieces together to not only deliver it in a straightforward, cohesive manner, but also I have to deliver it to those who know nothing about Bitcoin, as well as those that are a little bit more seasoned, but I want to convey the significance to it. So there was a lot to pack in. I could not get it done in a single episode, so my idea is to split it up. I'm going to do 3 episodes, and this first episode, we are just going to stick with the what is Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin and its significance? Because there's, like I said, there's a lot that goes into it, but I'm going to primarily focus on a few of its key features, just enough to sort of get you by. You should be able to leave this episode and know more about Bitcoin and sort of its internal functions and really what makes it stand out and set apart from anything else that's come before it or after it for that matter. But you also should be able to understand the meaning of Bitcoin and what it would mean not only to you as the individual, but to the world at large. And I think that's very important. My second episode, I'm going to dedicate to, well, there are those of you who you know of Bitcoin, you understand, well, you've heard about it, and unfortunately, you've probably caught a lot of negative press about Bitcoin. There's probably some negative connotations that come with it. And Bitcoin wasn't painted in the greatest light that you were introduced to. So I have to expel these myths. I have to talk about the individual hesitations that somebody might have when buying or interacting with Bitcoin, because there's a lot there. And I want to tackle each one of those because there's a lot of falsities and lies about Bitcoin that I need to address. And finally, my last episode, I'm going to tie a bow on this whole thing and compare what life might look like under a Bitcoin standard to our current monetary system. Because I think the big aha moment for lots of Bitcoiners is when, you first start out, the first step is, okay, you understand it. Okay, well, that's cool. What is Bitcoin? You kind of get it. Second step is like, okay, you learn maybe just a little bit more, but then like what really clicks inside people's head is when you compare that directly with what we have and you understand that, wow, what we have is so broken and so corrupt that Bitcoin is like this shining savior. That's when you get people that are so kind of excited and enthusiastic to share the Bitcoin message, such as myself. I'll firmly admit that that's kind of where I am in my Bitcoin journey, but I am excited to share that with you. So I hope that enthusiasm and passion is conveyed. Okay, so for starters, what is Bitcoin? I think a good starting spot, especially when you're talking with someone who knows absolutely nothing about Bitcoin, is to say that Bitcoin is like electronic cash, or even if you're talking to, because I know I have discussed Bitcoin with some of the older generation, I think it's worthwhile to liken it to digital gold, because I think they understand the importance of gold, and you can kind of think of Bitcoin as somewhat digital gold. Digital gold in that, it's a good place to store your money. It's a good kind of safeguard for the fluctuations and inflation of everything else, but also electronic cash in that it can be used very easily and very readily for everyday everyday purchases. Okay, so in that sense, you can kind of think of it like digital gold or digital cash. But of course, just describing it as this digital gold, it really, it does not do Bitcoin any sort of justice, because really what's going on underneath the hood of Bitcoin there's just so much more to that, but I can't talk about everything. What I've decided to do is I've decided to boil it down to 3 systems. 3, you can call them like pillars of Bitcoin that I believe are crucial to understanding what's really going on. So we're going to cover nodes, we're going to talk about miners, and then last, digital keys. After I explain these concepts, what I really want to do, the meat of this episode is going to be into explaining their significance, because Bitcoin is more than just these 3 pillars. Bitcoin is more than the sum of its parts. I really want to talk about what Bitcoin means in the broader context. Okay, so let's first talk about nodes. So Bitcoin has these things, they're called nodes, and they're spread out all over the world. And you really can think of these nodes, it's nothing fancy, they're computers that primarily run the Bitcoin software. Okay, like I said, it's nothing fancy, so don't get hung up on the term node. If I went online and downloaded the Bitcoin software and put it on my home laptop, or you did the same, then my computer or your computer would be considered a node. All right, and the barrier of entry for running a node is designed to be that simple. Just going online, finding the code, and running it on a machine. Okay, and what you're running on a particular node is 2 very important things. Like what's contained inside that node is 2 very important things. Inside each node is a copy of the Bitcoin protocol, or the rules that govern how Bitcoin operates, as well as a copy of every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever taken place. This is what we sometimes refer to as the public ledger. It's just the list of transactions, okay? So within nodes, you've got a set of rules and a list of transactions. So with that set of rules in mind, the idea is you want those rules to be spread out to as many people as possible. Like I said, the barrier of entry to operate these nodes has to be low. We want as many people, tens of thousands of people all over the world, to be running as many nodes as possible, to have a set of those rules. Because if those rules are spread out, then it's much easier to spot someone who's trying to break those rules. And it's much harder to change the rules when the source does not come from a single person or group. Rather, it's spread out all over. You can sort of liken this to chess, right? So within the world of chess, there's just too many people all over the world who understand and know the rules of chess as it is right now. And if I wanted to go in and change that would prove to be very difficult, because there's just too many people that already know what the original set of rules are. And so, I mean, maybe I could change it for myself or my buddy, but then if I ever wanted to sit down and play with anybody else, they would immediately think I'm cheating because I'm playing by a different set of rules, okay? We want that rules spread out to all the other nodes, and that's why these nodes, they hold the set of the Bitcoin protocol. And like I said, they also hold something else too. They also hold a complete list of transactions that have ever taken place. It's known as the public ledger. It's very important that each node has the exact same copy of those transactions. I mean, that would only make sense if I hold a list of transactions and you hold a list, and my list says that I paid rent last month, but yours does not. Clearly, there's an issue there. So we have to have some mechanism of keeping this list of transactions that's constantly being updated, right? Because people are constantly making transactions on Bitcoin. We have to have some mechanism to make sure that these public ledgers spread out through all the nodes are synced somehow. Okay, and this mechanism is done by miners. Now, miners is the second thing I want to talk about. It's the next sort of pillar to the Bitcoin system, and it's incredibly important. So to conceptualize this, first off, miners are just dedicated pieces of hardware. They're about the size of, like, say, a kitchen appliance or something. And functionally speaking, the miners do 2 things, essentially. So they verify transactions and they create new Bitcoins. So let me explain what really is going on here. So let's say you want to make a Bitcoin transaction. So the miners are going to gather up a bunch of transactions, including yours, and group them into what is known as a block. And then they're going to try and solve a particular puzzle with that block. I'm not going to go into the particulars of this puzzle, but just know that there is no shortcut to solving this puzzle for the miners. The only method is guess and check. They are literally guessing millions and millions of numbers per second in order to solve this puzzle. And so they require a great deal of energy to perform this computation. It requires much more energy than your normal computer because it has to process many more computations per second. And so these miners, that's why I say they're dedicated pieces of hardware. And so the first miner to do so, to solve this puzzle, they have shown and they have proven to the nodes, to the rest of the network, that they have put in the most amount of work. Because like I said, there is no shortcut. The first one to solve this puzzle, they proved that they guessed the most, which required the most amount of computational power. And then afterwards, they can finally put their block of transactions onto the blockchain, which is another term for the public ledger. The term blockchain just means it's a chain of actual blocks from the miners. Okay, so the miners, they get to add their block to the blockchain, and for that they get rewarded with some amount of Bitcoin. This is kind of like their payment for not only spending that much energy to solve that puzzle, but also for providing the Bitcoin network at large with a service, a validating verification service for these transactions. Okay. The important thing to note here is that the Bitcoin that they are paid with is brand new Bitcoin. Okay. That's why that's their second part of their function, is creating new bits of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin that they get paid with does not come from anybody, but rather it's freshly created and mined into the system, kind of like gold mining. The gold miners are the ones to bring new units of gold to the rest of the world. Bitcoin miners bring new units of Bitcoin to the system. However, there is a very important distinction that I want to make here between gold mining and Bitcoin mining, because it's worth mentioning that with Bitcoin mining, we will only ever have 21 million. Whereas with gold, we just don't know how much gold is out there waiting to be mined. This is not the case with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, we know there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. That's it. That's written in the code. We simply cannot change that. Not only that, but the rate at which we approach 21 million is also known. It is actually decreasing over time. I don't want to get too deep into this because I don't want to scare anybody off or confuse a lot of people with the intricacies of this. But just know, when we talk about mining Bitcoin, we can only mine 21 million, and the rate at which we mine that amount is decreased as time goes on. I just wanted to mention that really quickly because it's important to know that limit exists when we're talking about miners, but we will get into the importance of that here in just a little bit. Okay, so the miners can really be thought of as the input of real-world energy into the Bitcoin system in order to add transactions to the ledger. And remember, the nodes are the ones that keep the record of the ledger, right? They maintain the public ledger. So they will only write down the set of transactions that come from the miner who has put in the most amount of work. So in an odd sense, miners, okay, so they're not technically verifying transactions, the nodes are, but miners are more like they're doing the necessary work to prepare the next set of transactions for the nodes to record. It's kind of like in school, you put in the work to answer all the questions on a test, and the teacher can come along and very quickly verify if indeed you have put in the necessary, let's call it study work for the exam based on your answers alone, whether or not they're correct or not. If you got correct answers, assuming we're excluding the possibility of cheating here in this analogy, if you have correct answers, then the teacher can be quite confident that you've put in the necessary work in order to achieve those results. And I know, look, I get it. This all seems rather odd and over the top, especially if we're just talking about a digital money. I mean, I'm talking about like putting in work and guessing a puzzle and verifying a bunch of stuff. But I will explain why these miners are so necessary in a bit. But it's important to just understand what's going on with these miners, even if, we don't really have to interact with the miners on a day-to-day basis, because that is true. We really don't. Most people, they don't run a miner, they don't interact with that. For most people, we interact with Bitcoin just every day by sending and receiving Bitcoin into your digital wallet. Okay, and so that's the last little bit I want to talk about is your digital wallet or your digital keys. I mean, we call it a digital wallet probably just because the analogy is quite familiar, holding your funds in a wallet. But just know that when you download a Bitcoin wallet, what you're really holding is a set of digital keys. Okay, you have one key that's called the public key, and that's outward facing. You could give it to anybody. It really doesn't matter who holds this public key. It's public for a reason, because all that they can do with it is send you money. It's kind of like an address. It's like an address to where your money is stored. Okay, and that they can take it and they can send money to that location. All right. Now your private key, on the other hand, that's the thing that really allows you to take ownership of your money, of your Bitcoin, because that allows you to send your money out. Right. So if your money was trapped inside this giant, like say, glass room, and you could see it and your name was over the door and you could say, hey, that's my money. But if you didn't have if you couldn't access your money and actually use it how you wanted to, send it, pay for things, do with it what you will, it might as well not be your money. Even if someone sent it to the right location and it's there, if you don't have the private key, the thing necessary for you to send your money out, you might as well not even own that Bitcoin. So the private key is the important thing. That's the thing that you have to keep, like the name suggests, you have to keep this one private. Now, it helps a little bit because private keys are sometimes given to us and displayed as a set of, like, say, 12 or 24 English words. So they're easier to write down, not so difficult to mess up. You know what I mean? Instead of just having a long string of numbers and characters that you have to sort of write down, a list of words is a little bit more recognizable. Plus, the beautiful thing about that is it's able to be memorized and maybe taken with you in your head, that those keys to your money you can hold with you. And because you can memorize them and put them in your head, it's very difficult to confiscate your Bitcoin. And this is actually a really good point that I want to bring up, because many people who I've talked about Bitcoin, one of their, let's say, initial hesitations about Bitcoin is that, well, it's digital and anybody can hack it and to steal it. Now, what I want to say here and now about this digital wallet is that if you properly maintain your private key, that set of 12 or 24 English words, if you have properly kept that, and you don't store it online, you don't put it on your computer ever. I mean, you really have to consider this thing as the holy grail of your money. I mean, it's just as good as your money. So you have to write it down on something durable, hide it, memorize it, whatever you got to do, bury it in the backyard. I don't care. But that thing has to be kept private, because when you do, and someone tries to, like people are kind of scared of, kind of hack your Bitcoin, if someone tried to brute force guess your private key, so essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to guess the combination to your vault of money. The probability of them doing that is so astronomically small. And I want to give a shout out to, there is a mathematician on YouTube who goes by the name of 3 Blue 1 Brown, and he made this beautiful video describing what it would really take for somebody to hack your Bitcoin, right? To steal your funds, to have access to your private key. And it's astronomically absurd. So imagine 8 billion Milky Way galaxies. Well, first of all, already it's very difficult for us to just fathom a billion anything. But if you can, try thinking of a billion Milky Way galaxies, right? The span of that. And each of those galaxies is filled with 8 billion planets, each the size of the Earth. And on each of those planets is about 8 billion people, like we have on Earth's population. And each of those people are running a Google-sized supercomputer that is capable of guessing, again, say 8 billion guesses per second. So if a hacker had that amount of resources, so billions upon billions of galaxies with people and planets and all this, if a hacker had access to all of this, it would take him longer than the age of the universe in order to guess the combination to your private key. I mean, when they designed the Bitcoin cryptographic keys, these digital keys, they kept that in mind because we want it to be so absurdly impossible for anybody to hack your Bitcoin, because we want Bitcoin to be this amazing money that anybody can use, and it ought to be unconfiscatable. So I'll talk about that here in a little bit more about like the significance of this, but just keep in mind, Bitcoin, if you hold your private keys properly, it's probably one of the most private of private properties that mankind has ever come across. Okay, and so there is a down and dirty descriptor, a very functional definition of Bitcoin, and some of its key components, the components that I deem are pretty necessary to its understanding. If you're going to develop an opinion about Bitcoin, you at least ought to understand those systems. But furthermore, you should understand what they mean, which is what I really want to get into. But just keep in mind that the nodes, they're keeping the rules of the network spread out. The miners are ensuring that the public ledger is being updated with the same set of transactions throughout the network through proof of work. And your digital keys are what allows you to send and receive your Bitcoin. Okay, and with these three systems in mind, I hope that you picked up on some of the broader implications of Bitcoin. So, for example, I want to talk about Bitcoin's 21 million hard cap for just a little bit, because I don't think people grasp. People don't have an understanding in their brain just what it means that Bitcoin is the first scarce digital asset. Because people have always been conditioned to think that anything exists online and exists on your computer or on your phone can simply be copied and pasted, right? This is not the case with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is written in the rules. We can never, ever make any more than 21 million units of Bitcoin. And by the way, I just need to mention this really quickly. One Bitcoin is divisible 100 million times into the smallest unit called a Satoshi. So 100 million Satoshis make up one Bitcoin, just the same as 100 cents make up $1. So we can't make any more Bitcoin. And we're also stuck with its limited supply growth. So 21 million is the hard cap, but every 4 years, the new supply that comes onto market gets cut in half. So what does that look like? When Bitcoin first was up and running, the miners received 50 Bitcoin per block that they added to the blockchain. And then 4 years after that, it got cut in half to 25. And then 4 years later, 12 and a half. And right now we are currently sitting at 6.25 block reward for adding a block to the blockchain. And I mentioned this schedule only to tell you that none of this was haphazardly thrown together. Bitcoin was meticulously planned, and each component is perfectly designed to serve a particular function. And its limited supply and its limited supply growth is meant to grow Bitcoin's value over time. That's what it's meant to do. What would happen to the price of coffee, let's say, if coffee farms started shutting down one by one year over year and we weren't making any more coffee? Okay, we all know the price of coffee would skyrocket. This is the same concept, but for Bitcoin, but for the money, is that when its supply keeps getting constricted and there's an eventual hard cap, you have an explosion of its value, what it can buy with its value. And by the way, that's something that you and I desperately want in our money. We want to take our money through time, and not just to hold it through time and to have $10 today and $10 in the future. We would love to actually increase that amount to something larger in the future. We desperately want that. That's why we pour our money into the stock market and put it into real estate and all these other fancy mutual funds and whatnot, just to have our money do work for us. You put in the hard work, you make some money early in life, you throw it in somewhere and you save it. You want that money to come work for you later in life and be bigger and stronger than what it was, because you are literally pricing in time. I can prove this to you, by the way, talking about just Bitcoin's design, that it goes up forever and how we want that and it's highly desirable for us. I can prove this to you. Let's say I offer you $100 today or $100 in a year. Which would you prefer? Every single person here would prefer the $100 today, because the future is uncertain. You don't know, and it's a year off. We'd rather have the $100 now. It's more secure here in my hand now. Okay, so maybe I say, how about $100 now or $101 in the future? You'd still say, I'll take the 100 now. But if I keep increasing this, let's play the game over and over, 101, 102, 103, 120, 150, 200, 300, there is some number where you think to yourself, okay, I could maybe it could go either way because both of them are equal. Means that year time you have priced, you have added to the value of your money. And there is some number that each individual, let's say it's $200, you'd rather have $200 in a year than 100. That means in 1 year you want double, you'd hope that your 100 is doubled in value. We desperately want this. This is built into Bitcoin, and people flock to Bitcoin because of this. You can look at its price chart and what's described as number go up technology, because people, this is their first dip their big toe into the Bitcoin pool. They buy a little bit of Bitcoin and they freak out because they stare at the price and they worry all about it because they want the price of Bitcoin to go up so that the value of their investment has also gone up. Well, it is designed to go up. Now, there's a lot of volatility here, that's for certain, but there is no 4-year period where Bitcoin has lost value. And I urge you, if you look up return on investment by asset classes, you find one that actually has Bitcoin in there. In fact, let me plug, you can actually go to pricedinbitcoin21.com. You go there and you get to see over time exactly how well Bitcoin performed to virtually every other asset and commodity. And by the way, it's not even close. When you compare Bitcoin's price over 5, 10, or even 3-year time span to all these other commodities, you're going to look at that and think to yourself, man, why didn't I invest at least $1,000 when I first heard about Bitcoin? So Bitcoin is highly attractive because of its ability to not only maintain its value through time, but to actually grow in value through time. And it's the reason why so many people maybe have the first initial glance at it. They look at it and they think, oh, well, maybe I should allocate some money because look at its track record. And people flock to Bitcoin just for that superficial number go up technology, but they stay for the revolution that is right behind it, because all you need to do is just peek under the surface, learn a little bit more, and Bitcoin will open your eyes to higher ideals than simply your money going up. And yes, that is a attractive feature. But may I say that Bitcoin can actually offer us life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I don't mean to tie Bitcoin strictly into some American thing, because as we discussed, Bitcoin is for everyone in all walks of life. But if I had to grab a set of values that I believe most people would deem universal and convince you that Bitcoin offers you these ideals, then maybe you'll start to understand Bitcoin's incentives. Okay, how in the world can Bitcoin help with life? Well, I partly described it just a second ago. Bitcoin is designed to grow in value. So what does that mean? What does that incentivize us to do? I know for me, it makes me want to save my Bitcoin, because if I can save some of my Bitcoin and I know that Bitcoin will be worth more in the future, I'm not speculating. I'm not risking it by putting it in the stock market. No. I know that it will be worth more in the future than it is today. So if I know that it will be worth some amount more, that means that I don't have to worry if, say, a medical bill comes up or I get in a wreck with my car or something else. There is less disaster that is going to wreck me in the future if I know that my Bitcoin will pay for it. That little bit of me saving today, my sacrifice today, is literally paying me for a more stable future tomorrow, ensuring my life tomorrow, which is incredible because Bitcoin is literally monetizing delayed gratification. When you have the ability to save and plan for your future, you're more likely to get there. You're more likely to live in that future when you have a savings plan for it, when you actually have thought about it and your money can grow alongside with you into that future. So yes, Bitcoin does help protect life itself because it is a savings mechanism that allows you to take the assurity of your hard work and energy and effort today and allows you to bring it with you into the future so that it can help you with your actual life. And now, when it comes to liberty, the value of liberty or freedom, I think Bitcoin is the clear winner when it comes to any other financial institution or monetary system. There is no monetary system that offers you more freedom than Bitcoin. Okay, with its nodes decentralizing the rules, the protocol, there is no one person in control. That means you are it. You are your own bank. Bitcoin is literally encouraging you to take on the responsibility of keeping track of your money and being your own bank. For a lot of people, that can be a little scary, but it can also be a little scary if someone hands you car keys and gives you the freedom to drive on the open road for the first time. Yeah, you could get in a wreck, but are you more free with a car than without? Yes. Are you more free with an open protocol network using Bitcoin? Yes. And if you really think about it, it should not make sense that we offload our responsibility of financial freedom to the banks. We are so used to giving our money to banks and just praying that they'll give it back to us when we ask for it. This does not make sense. It's your hard-earned money, and if you have to ask permission to use your money, it's not yours anymore. It's not yours. If I have to get on the phone and order a Visa card or have an account with the bank and do all this just to have access to my money, let alone the idea that they could make a mistake and freeze my assets, or I could say the wrong thing on social media and the government could freeze my assets. There is so much wrong with having a central authority planning your finances of all things. So obviously Bitcoin is the free choice. It's that which is giving the most freedom to the most amount of people all over the world. Bitcoin is money by the people for the people. And if that is not preserving liberty, I don't know what else is. Which is a wonderful segue into pursuit of happiness. Because if you are free to use your money how you want to, then the landscape of possibilities just opens up to whatever pursuit you want to make. Any path you choose to go down is freely yours to pursue. And when there is no middleman between me and whoever I want to spend my money on or the good or service that I want to buy, then that opens up all avenues. There is no one stopping me from purchasing this or selling this or sending money to this person for that particular good or service. I literally, the world is at my fingertips for what I want to buy, and absolutely no one can stop me from doing that. And not only that, nobody can steal my Bitcoin from me. There is no one to stop me from sending my Bitcoin, and there is nobody from stealing my Bitcoin. So if you are if you are a bad faith actor, okay, let's call you a thief or, hey, the government, but I repeat myself. If you are someone who wants my Bitcoin, the only method for you to get it, well, you have two. Number one, you can either provide me something of value such that I willingly give it to you. That's called a free trade. So what that does is now this is greedy, bad faith actor who's out there in the world seeking to steal value, and instead they are forced because of Bitcoin to provide society with value. Don't you see that incentive? Then if you're the government and you say, hey, I want to take your Bitcoin, you simply cannot do that. And instead the government has to, do the thing that governments were supposed to do. Enforce the laws properly, build some better roads, have a better medical infrastructure, whatever you want the government to do. If the government actually provides that of value, okay, here you go. But there is no other way. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one way. You can mine Bitcoin. Okay, so in the first example, you can provide value to society and then you'll get Bitcoin. Or you can provide the Bitcoin network with actual energy, with actual security, and then you get more Bitcoin. Okay, if no one can steal your Bitcoin and you are free to purchase whatever you want with it, and the people who are most likely to try and steal are now forced to provide you with some good or service or value, how is that not increasing in the pursuit of happiness? Boy, I tell you, you offer someone a money that can be stored in their head, taken with them wherever they go, can't be confiscated or frozen. It's permissionless with no gatekeepers. It's digitally scarce, so no one is making any more of these things. It's designed to buy you more stuff as time goes on, which is only going to attract more people to want to own it. And it's wrapped up in this incentive structure that encourages people to be productive and actually contribute to society. This is a revolutionary monetary asset, and yet its simplicity is part of its genius. Bitcoin is not that complex of an idea. In fact, Bitcoin operates on a very simple economic and philosophical principle. Your time and energy on this planet are your own. You were born with it, and by right, you can direct it and work towards whatever you want. You are free to do so. But depending on how much value you provide to society with that time and energy, you are going to be paid in a money that is also yours by right. No one should be able to control or steal that money, just as no one should be able to control and steal your efforts. Because Bitcoin is a direct reflection of your time and your energy. It only makes sense that the money you gain producing value for others is as much your right as the time and energy that you started with. You see, Bitcoin's value is not in its US dollar price tag, but rather in its ethics and incentives, because it enshrines financial liberty and property to the individual. It encourages sacrifice today for a better tomorrow, and it forces the corrupt and the dishonest into the productive and hardworking. And for once, I am more than happy and willing to put my money where my values are. Conventional Wisdom is a FreedomCast production. You can visit us at freedomcast.us, or if you'd like to support our work, you can go to freedomcast.locals.com. We'll see you there.